Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Today's story. Listen, do you hear what I hear? So, growing up as an only child, my maternal first cousins were among my first friends. I lived 100 miles away from them the first 7 years of my life, so hardly ever got to see them, just, on rare occasions. And then Papa died. That's maternal, my mother's maternal grandfather. So mom decided that she would move back home to be closer to her mom. Well, that was going to separate me from my neighborhood friends, but it was going to bring me closer to my first cousins too. So I was pretty excited about that. And it meant that I was going to be starting my third school in as many years. Well, we made the move, and because mom didn't have anybody to keep me while she worked, I stayed out in the country, in the county, with my maternal aunt and her husband, who I call Mama and Daddy, and their daughter, who's 8 years my senior, although she and I were the same size. Yep, 15, 16 years old, and she was the size of a 7 or 8 year old. Or maybe it was the reverse. 7 or 8 year old was the size of a 16-year old. Potato, potato. But I got a chance to see my cousins a lot more. I had four other cousins who lived in that area, and their ages were stair steps down to mine. And then there were 2 years between my age and their younger sister, their baby sister. Well, that year of school, they now became not only my cousins, but my schoolmates. And when I tell you, we were tight. We were so tightly knit that sometimes their mom, when somebody had gotten in trouble, she found evidence that somebody had done something that they weren't supposed to do. She would threaten to discipline all of us. Fine with us. You'll get us all, but you won't get one. We would not tell anything that happened. Sometimes I think about it now and I think, gosh, it's good that we weren't bad children because I don't know if the U.S. was ready for that kind of a tight knit group. But we would play together. We did a lot of things together, and I lived, as I said, with mom and daddy and my other cousin, and there was a dynamic in that household that was just new to me. I had not really encountered adults who argued, and that was scary to me. My parents divorced when I was a toddler, so I just, you know, my father was out of the house before I even knew a daddy was supposed to be in the house. So I just didn't have that experience of adults disagreeing like that. And I would watch, and it was painful to watch, to be honest. Um, the only thing that was more painful than that was when Mama would sing because she was tired of arguing. Oh gosh, she sang in Q flat, and that Q stood, and loudly, that Q stood for quick, cover your ears. Or it was to remind you of that quacking sound that her singing sounded. I mean, it sounded like a dying duck. And my cousin and I, we would run to daddy because it only happened when daddy made her mad. And we run to daddy and we say, "What did you do?" And he just sit there and scratch his head. And we go and I say, "Mama, why do you sing?" I mean, I didn't mention to her how badly it sounds, but just why do you sing when you're mad? And she said, to argue with a fool makes two. I thought. I said, well, what does that mean? She said, well, if you argue with a fool, you become a fool too. Okay. It sounded good, but her credibility was kind of shot with me because she was the same one that said, if you sweep somebody's feet, you'll go to jail. That person whose feet you swept would go to jail. Well, some of the things, she just had these beliefs and sayings and what have you, and some made sense, some didn't. Some were testable, like that one, and some were not. And she lost her credibility because that day she told me if I swept her feet, she'd go to jail, or whoever's feet got swept would go to jail. You know what I did? I swept my feet and I sat on that porch all day. I fell asleep waiting for the sheriff to come and get me. Yep. Finally, it got so hot I woke up, realized nobody was coming to get me, and I went inside and I said, you told me if you swept somebody's feet, they go to jail. Well, what are you talking about? I said, well, I swept my feet and I sat on that porch all day. Nobody's come to get me yet. Go somewhere and sit down. She never had an explanation for these sayings and beliefs that she had that were testable, but the test failed. So she kind of lost her credibility with me, but this saying about arguing with a fool, it just made sense. Well, you know what else? I started reading in the Holy Bible, and there it was, right there in Proverbs 26:4. I'm going to read it to you because you might not believe me either. Yep, right there. Proverbs 26, verse 4. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Well, what do you know? Mama knew a thing or two. Well, I started trying to put that into practice. I thought that's easy, just don't talk to a fool. Well, what I didn't know, fools are skillful at baiting you into an argument. I don't know, it might be like a full-time job for them or something. And so I'd encounter these people that would just say the most ridiculous things. And you know what the next verse in Proverbs 26:5 says? Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. Yep, got it right there. In his word, it's proof positive. The Lord backs me up. Don't let people get away with saying ridiculous stuff. But I was talking with a friend one day and I was really concerned. I said, you answer a fool according to his folly, lest he, become conceited and think that what he's saying is true. I said, but if somebody stumbles upon that discussion or argument, they may not know which one is the fool. My friend said, oh, yes, they will. The one who's talking. Well, what do you do with that? Well, I learned, I guess you don't have to argue about it. You just say it and move on. Well, either don't talk to a fool, or if you find you're talking to a fool, just correct them and move on. I can do that. Well, again, those fools, they are professionals at baiting you into an argument. Sometimes they'll just become contentious. And I encountered a contentious one. You know, the type that just argue for the sake of arguing? Like it literally adds fuel to their fire that you will be baited into this argument, that you just can no longer ignore them. Those type, well, contentious one got me. And contentious one would say something and I would say something back. And contentious one would say something else and I would say something else back. Well, I just found myself fully engaged in this. I had had a lot of practice because those cousins of mine that I'd grown up with, I didn't realize it, but one of them had planted a seed in my thoughts. When I was getting ready to go to my fourth school in as many years, yeah, I was moving to the city with mom. The oldest of the four siblings told me I was going to have to learn how to fight because I was moving to the city and those city kids were going to fight me. And I was not going to have them there to help defend me. I didn't understand that. Somebody just wants to fight me. Why? Just because. Just because of what? I'm my only child, like, and I don't have anybody to defend me. Why would they want to fight me? But it planted that thought that I had to defend myself. And so there I was in fourth grade with these city children who wanted to fight me, according to my cousin, just because I'm an only child and I don't have anybody to defend me. So I developed the habit of bristling up. I was pretty big for my age. I was pretty tall. To give you an idea, I was 5'7" by the time I was 11 or 12 years old. So I was pretty tall in fourth grade. And I realized that if I just bristled up, well, they didn't really know me. They may have thought that they could beat me, but nobody knew me. I was brand new. And I would even say to them, you might beat me, but you'll think twice before you touch me again. That caused them to pause. And I grew up with that defensive nature. You might win, but you'll think twice before you try me again. And I took that into this disagreement with contentious one, and we would just go at it back and forth. And then finally one day the Holy Spirit stepped in. I guess he said, look, I said Proverbs 26:4. You still got baited in. I sent Proverbs 26:5. You still got baited in. I'm going to show up personally. He said, you have the right to remain silent. When I tell you that was the most painful year of my life, because I was so accustomed to defending myself. He said to me, you cannot even say, don't make a sound. Well, he knows me. And I have a lot of those, you don't say a word, but just kind of make the face. I could not even make a sound. Contentious one took notice of that. You don't have anything to say? I said, I do. But it's in my best interest not to. Contentious one continued on, and I remained silent. A lot of times in those disagreements, contentious one would say things that were out of bounds. I guess I would too. But in the back and forth, neither one of us really heard what the other said nor what we said. And when that out of bounds statement was made, we each blamed the other one for saying it because we would never say a thing like that. Well, in my silence, contentious one said something that was out of bounds, and I remained silent because it was in my best interest not to say anything. And contentious one heard those words. And there was that long, pregnant pause because I was silent. And contentious one had to on those words and said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Blew my mind. I didn't see that coming. Wow. That's the first. Well, what do you know? The right to remain silent. Well, what I learned is I can sing like mama. I can just say what needs to be said and be done with it, or I can remain silent. Hmm. Imagine that. Listen, do you hear what I hear?